I had the opportunity to talk with Zubair Quraishi, Red Hat middleware architect, angel investor, founder of multiple technological projects, and runs the Satoshi podcast, but overall, an excellent human being with a deep insight into the crypto industry. His perspective on what happened recently with FTX and Binance is fascinating. Talking with him was an incredible, enriching experience, and I'm sure listening to this podcast will be insightful. This podcast exists to speak with crypto industry privileged minds. And if you consider at any point you receive value, consider subscribing and following on all social media platforms. I invite you to check the links in the description to be part of our community or explore the possibility of collaborating. And without any further ado, Zubair Quraishi. Zubair, thank you so much for joining. This is a project where we want to communicate with the world the perspective of builders, people like you that have been in the space for more than a decade right now, and in a very recent and emerging industry like the crypto space, that is like saying that you are the ancestor, the builders that have been from the very early beginning. So I would like to talk with you about what is happening right now with FTX and Binance, but also I would like to understand your perspective in deepest concept when it comes to the creation of new technology to solve real problems using the blockchain technology far beyond the hype, far beyond the meme coins. So I would like to invite you to introduce yourself, your career as you consider, and yeah, let's talk about very interesting topics that I believe we can touch today.
Yeah, so my name is Zubair, and my career has been quite mixed. I've done software development for like 40 years, 30 years professionally, and I've worked in a lot of different banking institutions, JP Morgan, Deutsche Bank, Merrill Lynch, Bankers Trust, Swift, the payments, and loads of others, doing a lot of their settlements and with user-facing systems. I've worked on the trading desks. I've worked with insurance. I've worked with all sorts of stuff. I've also worked in a lot of startups as well in the technology space. In 2010, I heard about Bitcoin and I mined a little bit. And I also bought a little bit the following year. And then 2014, I lost pretty much everything in MT Gox. Because of that loss, I tried to claim it as a tax loss. And as a result of that, the world's first Bitcoin financial law came into effect. And you can put the link in your show notes. So that was in 2014 in Denmark, because basically the tax authority at that point said, pay this guy money for losing Bitcoin? No way. Bitcoin will make it tax-free. And that's exactly what they did. And that was Denmark was the first country to do that. If anyone has an earlier date of a legal ruling on crypto, I'd like to know. But as far as I know, that was the first because of my case. After that, I got disillusioned with smart contracts for a few years. I could have got into Ethereum at the ICO. And this is the thing, sometimes you can be so clever and you can miss it all. I'd been so burned that I dismissed it. I said, don't invest in that. That's trash, And so, I could have probably got tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Ethereum coins. I don't know how many. I could have got a lot and I didn't. I'd said, no, forget it. And a lot of other people did see it. And I think this is one of the interesting things in crypto, because people seem to think that people who got in mega early made a lot of money. But almost everyone I know who was in crypto 2010, 2011 lost money or lost everything, because most of those people got hacked, because security was much harder to do then. You couldn't just buy a hardware wallet. To secure Bitcoin, you had to set up Linux machines, and you had to make sure you had proper backups, and it was I did it myself, and then one little mistake putting it on an exchange, boom, it all went. See, so it was like, and this is the thing is, going forward, even now, crypto's hard to secure. How do you secure crypto? You have to have paper wallets or passwords cut in half, stored in different physical locations. You'll need bodyguards to guard those wallets. You need protocols, blah, blah. It basically becomes worse than a bank. So storing crypto is going to be one of the biggest reasons that crypto goes up in value, or things like Bitcoin, because it's just not easy. And it's still an unsolved problem. And people say, oh, just use a hardware wallet. But it's not that simple. To secure that wallet, you then have to do the same thing. You have to look after the keys. And like, even if you use something like Ledger or Trezor, it doesn't mean it's secure. How do you know that the CIA or the UK government or another government hasn't infiltrated Ledger and made them install software on their ledgers? So Absolutely. They have a backdoor. Like one day you might suddenly find out that all ledgers get hacked and all the funds are drained. It's possible.
And I think looking back makes sense now. Understanding the role that centralized exchange played, especially for new users. But before getting into the role and how the market has evolved, I would like to capture a moment because you said something very interesting. Back then, when just Bitcoin was basically the only thing, and then Ethereum as an ecosystem emerged, I would like to capture, because now Ethereum is like one of the main projects, but back then was the new things among many other, maybe in the technical community was like another paper, another project. So I would like to capture, because it's very special to have the perspective of someone that was there and living it from the first, from the first point of view. How was the development, the early stages of Ethereum, and why you think that it was not so clear? And maybe are there some clues, or can we extrapolate that scenario today so we can filter in a better way new projects?
Okay, so there's a lot of things if you unpack that. I mean, you have to, because when a lot of people ask me that, I'm always trying to figure out what they're actually asking. Are they asking me which is going to be the next big token? Or are they, sometimes they say, what's the next big token? But I mean, you have to have you have to have a framework for evaluating all this. Can I ask, do you know Solidity?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So you know how to write a smart contract and deploy it in Ethereum?
Yeah. I mean,
okay.
I'm not a Solidity developer, but there is a very good introduction to Solidity on YouTube. It's like 32 hours, really recommended. And I'm familiar, not developer though.
Okay, but that's the very basics. I mean, to be in crypto, the thing is, it's kind of like being in 1990, before the web browser was, invented, and you're asking people to, what do you want to build on the web, So it's very hard to extrapolate back from, like, say, 1990, because don't forget the internet had developed since when was the internet developed? In the 60s? Yeah, started in the 60s. If it wasn't for Steve Jobs getting fired from Apple, inventing Next, and then the web was invented on Next. All these things had to go right to get the web, and people don't realize that Steve Jobs was so instrumental in the invention of the web. They do not realize, but because he made a development system with Next, which was really easy to develop on, and that's what what's his name, who developed, Tim Berners-Lee developed the web on a Next computer because it was so easy. If Steve Jobs hadn't been fired from Apple or developed that the Next computer, maybe the internet, the web wouldn't have been developed, and maybe today we'd actually be like 30 years behind. Because don't forget, the internet was there for a long time, kind of languishing. And it didn't start to accelerate until after the web. We could be still today with our Nokia smartphone, and say, what's the next big thing? And then someone said, I heard about this web. We might not be talking about crypto today. Instead, we could have been talking about the web.
So you mean sometimes the future is hard to predict because we live like the result of compound effect. It's like the compound results of accidents.
Sorry,
Hi.
Yeah. Well, it's not. I mean, from Steve Jobs' point of view, it wasn't an accident. He always saw a vision of this type of future, and so from his point of view, it wasn't. But it took someone like him to actually have that vision of that you have to produce something like that. I mean, like, imagine if Satoshi hadn't made that white paper, we might not be. Who knows? Maybe the blockchain would never have been invented. Maybe it would have just we'd just be set, sitting here. Facebook maybe would have been 100 times bigger, and and maybe we'd be saying, yeah, we always knew it was Facebook, and we'd be talking like Facebook was, because when Facebook came out, if you remember in 2008, people were talking like the invention of the social network was like the big, like people talk about crypto now, they thought that was the big revolution. So, but when you're looking forward, I mean, I'll give you some examples from my own podcast. I always ask the guests, right, a question. I say, what do you see the world will be in 5 years? And the reason I ask that is I'm trying to figure out, are they in this for the money?
Absolutely.
Right? Because if they're in it for the money, they usually say, oh, I don't know, nobody can predict. Yeah. But to me, the thing is to think, where's this? I always think, where's this going in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years? Then you can kind of work your way backwards. And a lot of the things that I think are going to happen, people in crypto say, no, that's not going to happen, because they're talking from an idealist point of view. But actually, you need to think of, like, to work forward to what's going to happen, you have to think in terms of network effects, and you have to know people. Like, I see so many, like, I evaluate a lot of companies for other people, and a lot of people come to me with fantastic technology in the crypto space, and half the time it's the next Ethereum or Solana killer, And then I say, well, how does this get adopted? And people have this field of, have you seen the film Field of Dreams with Kevin Costner? Have you seen it? And you build it, they will come. You build a magic baseball stadium or whatever, and people come, but they don't.
That's a very interesting point of view. From my humble expertise, I'm not the best marketer. I have many things to learn, and a lot of people know much more about me when it comes how to design system for the acquisition of products. But at least the experience I have had in my agency is there is a phenomenon when someone builds something, especially when there is um, a very technical profile. Sometimes there is not a correlation between technical genius and understanding and having that know-how that maybe Steve Jobs had to understand how you can build a solution. Because something technically complex doesn't mean that it solves a real issue in the world in the context of today's world. Because even if the technology, time and time again, we have experience and we have a lot of records in history that the right product, because it was in the wrong time, don't find the market fit. So even the right solution, but not in the right time frame, you actually are not able to put it into the market. And I believe sometimes when we focus 100% into the technology, but take out of the equation like the status quo of the ecosystem or how that technology will be adopted, there is something missing that people like Steve Jobs, they or people, I don't know your perception on Elon Musk right now, but this kind of geniuses that beyond the technical is like having this type of people have this know-how to understand the market. And I think those things are so important to be aligned. And going back to something you said previously, because we were talking about, can we extrapolate the creation of Ethereum back then to now so we can have like a better framework to perceive good projects? And you said it's very hard. But all the references you made just recently are projects that solve a real issue. So do you believe that the projects that have the better potential are those who try to solve real issues? But we have phenomena like Dogecoin, for example. So what do you think about it?
Well, I mean, Dogecoin was a fork of Bitcoin, and it was made as a joke. And I mean, there are some things which are random, but it didn't actually make anything new. It's not guaranteed to survive. It might be that Elon Musk says, like people say Elon Musk is going to use it on Twitter, but it's also possible he'll just say, no, I'll just stick with Bitcoin and I'll use the Lightning Network for payments on Twitter. So I mean, people think that Elon Musk's, because like one of the things is when you made a lot of money, and a friend said this to me once, he said, the really amazing thing is when you get rich, everyone thinks you're a genius, and most clever people I know are not wealthy, it's making money and being really clever about crypto can be very different things. And so I don't think that Elon Musk actually understands crypto.
Okay.
He's a smart guy, but I think he's got the potential to, but I think the reason he doesn't really understand it yet is because he hasn't dived deep into it. He's a very first principles guy.
Underlying technology, you mean? It's like
So,
Elon
yeah,
Musk understands solidity, for example.
Yeah, but it's not just solidity. I don't think he actually understands. Like for example, like when he bought Bitcoin, he even said it himself. He said, he bought it like after 12 years. He didn't go into it in the beginning, but it didn't really matter. His focus was somewhere else. But I think if he focused on crypto, there's a good chance he might say he'll use Doge, but then there's also a good chance he might, once he understands it, says, yeah, well, I'll just use Bitcoin actually. But because he's proven that he can he can understand rocket science, and he didn't know anything about that. But when you're looking at a lot of these things, like if you look at, for example, a lot of inventions, often there's certain people who can, like when you look at the past, the dots don't always connect. No, going forward, the dots don't always connect. When you go backwards, the dots connect, like with the internet and crypto and Steve Jobs with the dots. Oh, perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. But going forward, they don't. But the genius is in trying to connect the dots going forward as best you can. And sometimes you have to take yourself 20 years in the future and say, how could this future play out? And that's difficult because you have to look at every single turn in the junction and what could happen. And you have to think about how normal people react. I mean, if you look at things like, for example, Elon Musk or crypto, I mean, who's the common thread behind it? Who's a common person behind social networks and Ethereum? It's actually the same person, Peter Thiel. Because Peter Thiel, he did PayPal,
okay,
and then they joined with Elon Musk. Then Peter Thiel, he funded he was the person who funded Vitalik.
Okay.
Yeah. And he was also the guy who funded Mark Zuckerberg before that. So Peter Thiel is one of those people like Steve Jobs who can connect the dots going forward.
He understands the process from 0 to 1.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, his book it's so good because he's saying you can't, like that, like Doge is not going Bitcoin is 0 to 1. Doge is not. Doge is just, you've read the book, I presume, and Doge is just it's just copying it. And sometimes there's nothing wrong with copying, but real innovation and the stuff that I try and do now is stuff which is 0 to 1.
Also, Bitcoin is a phenomena beyond the technical perspective itself, because also part of the equation is that the creator is anonymous and disappear. Also,
there's people who know who the creator is. There are people who know who it is.
Oh, really? My God.
Yeah, there's people, but the thing is, these people, they're sensible and they keep quiet. Everyone has their theory. The good thing about it is
statement.
there's people who know who he is because people collaborated with him, and
I guess so.
I know that Craig Wright says he is, and the thing is, Craig Wright, he's a little bit like Donald Trump in a way because he might say a lot of I think there's probably a 5% chance he's Satoshi. 5%. Okay. I've met people who think he is. I don't actually think he is, though. Most likely he's not. But when you look at his credentials and what he's done, yeah, he's in the right kind of ballpark. It could have been him. The problem is, it's like Donald Trump. Even though some of the policies might be right. People don't like the person.
Yeah,
And we're in a world where there's cancel culture. So,
absolutely.
if suddenly Donald Trump says you have to breathe oxygen every day, everyone will stop breathing, and
Absolutely.
you
I
know,
get it 100%.
yeah. So we have to. I can't remember what your question was. What was your question again?
No, no, no. You made a very interesting point, and you also touched another very interesting point that is the cancel culture. Quite interesting. I just made the comment that the phenomena of Bitcoin goes beyond the technical creation, but also the fact that Satoshi, the creator, disappeared, the wallet never moved. So give like the sensation that is a decentralized structure that we can argue it is not, but it looks like. And it's like Bitcoin as a project itself has like an aura. I don't know how to properly say that.
That's correct.
It's like saying Twitter. It is not the technology. A lot of other platforms do exactly what Twitter does as a platform from the technological perspective, but there is like the ecosystem around that create something. So I think the fact that Bitcoin was the first one, etc. But that was just a parenthesis.
But don't forget, it was the first one. But don't forget, crypto has the thing is when people hear the buzzwords like crypto means almost everything now. Yeah, I mean crypto. Like every time you're on your web browser and you get that little lock and it
Mm,
says HTTPS.
mm,
That's been there since 1990s or something.
mhm.
That is using crypto, but it's not using blockchain. Yeah.
Okay,
So
that is
people have been
interesting.
trying to they've been trying to build digital and these type of ledgers for years, but Bitcoin was the only one which actually kind of got it right and got the incentives right and worked. I mean, there's a lot of other decentralized systems which kind of work, like DNS and the internet itself.
Okay.
There is some central points. I mean, even with with Bitcoin, I wouldn't say I'd say the key to Bitcoin, like you compared it to Twitter, the thing about crypto is just a technology, but but crypto was there before Bitcoin. The real thing is decentralization. That's the genius of Bitcoin. It allows decentralization, and the fact that no one can even today can control like when China. Do you remember when they banned all the miners? Bitcoin was just fine. People moved the miners out of the country, started mining. So the innovation it gave was not crypto. It used crypto to make it decentralization. That was the innovation, and that allowed you to give, and that gave the decentralized ledger in a the ledger in a decentralized way. The thing
Absolutely.
is, most people in the world, like when they hear crypto, all they think about is tokens going up and down and up and down. But and now people are saying, "Oh, you're in a bear market. See, I knew crypto would crash," but they don't realize crypto is going to be, I reckon, a million times bigger than it
Absolutely.
is today. It's going to be everything. I mean, when you're walking in the street, it's like even if you look at history, when computers were first around, I think it's someone said, and I don't know if it was in jest or if I'm misquoting, but they said there might be a world market for 4 or 5 computers, and now people carry more than that just in their pocket.
Absolutely.
Um, and so I can imagine a world where people will walk along, like people are now saying to me, "Oh, NFTs are dead." But then in 10 years they might have like a million of them on them at any one time, because it's NFT is really just a digital key, a digital asset. And so looking back, like if like with my father, for example, my father always says, "Oh, I'm not interested in technology. I just use my iPhone." You know, and crypto will be the same. It will become invisible. And when it's becoming invisible and people stop talking about tokens and coins, and when Bitcoin is $20 million a Bitcoin, people won't even bother about it. Like IP addresses. IP addresses used to be free in the 90s, and now how
Okay.
much are they? It's like how many, there's what? 65,000 times 65,000 IP4 addresses.
Okay.
And just to rent one, it's like $5 or $10 a month just to rent one.
Wow.
And I don't even know how much they cost, but I know Amazon has, I think they've got billions of dollars of them. So you think about it, crypto is going to be the same. Like no one today, like in the old days of the internet, people would connect to each other. They type in the IP address sometimes. And then DNS came and you could type in like Amazon.com and it mapped Amazon to the IP address, which is like the phone number. And that's a bit like kind of, I'd say crypto is today, where you type in addresses and you're getting Ethereum name service, but nobody talks about IP addresses anymore. You know, like IP addresses are so valuable now compared to 20, 25 years ago, but people don't care. People don't say, oh, I bought IP addresses early. And I think crypto will be the same. Crypto will be the same. It's just, you know, it's caught the public imagination for a bit. And I think that the reason it's caught the public imagination is because it's going to be so big that because crypto really, like, for the biggest thing it's probably it's allowing people to set up companies and organizations and things that are described in the network state by Balaji. It's going to allow a decentralized version of everything else. I mean, you saw what happened today with FTX and Binance. I mean, absolutely. Binance has got a lot of centralization, but I'd say it's a lot more centralized, a lot more decentralized than FTX. And FTX, you know, they got bought, and I think it's a great thing, personally. I don't know how we got. I went around the houses a bit. Sorry.
Actually, before getting into that trending topic, because we have to talk about it, I would like to ask you something fundamental that is connected to eventually centralized exchanges. But when you start creating in the blockchain technology early stages, I'm sure that you did it not because of the money. It was not an incentive. Now it looks like an incentive, and a lot of people get into this space because they want to buy the next moonshot, or they want to trade and make some money. But I guess, and I hope you can share with us, what was your insight? What did you understand that the blockchain technology fundamentally changed in such a way that you invest time and effort to understand in a very weird new technology?
Sure. Okay.
Insight?
I'll admit I wasn't sure in the beginning. I wasn't sure, but I knew something was happening, because the thing is, I've missed a lot of, you know, when you see something happening around you and you don't get it. Yeah. Like in 2010, I remember I never really understood what was going on Twitter and Facebook. I didn't have accounts. And then I realized the world. Then one day I woke up and it was kind of like I was a guy and I'd woken up in a time machine, you know, and I'd woken up in a different world. And I didn't understand it, you know, like I'd gone 100 years in the future, you know, and because my world was always PCs and Commodore 64 and Amiga and computers from the old days, you know. And suddenly I was in this world of the future, and I started learning web development. I started learning this, I started learning that. And I got to the thing so late on many things like cloud and other things. I was always late to the party. I was like the guy who'd turn up at the end and they'd say, sorry, we finished, and the DJ's packing up, you know. But with crypto, I saw something happening, and I knew I'd been late to the party with DeFi and smart contracts. And I just kind of jumped in, and I started a podcast to learn it. And now that I've learned it, I'm much more excited, because it could have been that I would have been like, nah, this is nothing. But the more I got into it, the more excited I got. So it's weird, because nothing actually did get me into it. It was, I just knew something was happening, and I thought, like I'm always a person, I'm like, I give everything a chance. Like some people say, oh, that thing is rubbish. I say, I'm not going to say it's rubbish until I've tried it, you know? And so I tried it. I tried the crypto pill, and I was like, okay, this is something. But for me, the key thing, the thing that got me was the first thing that really got me, actually, to maybe understand, because everyone's talking about decentralization because it's fashionable, yeah? Like all these projects come out and say, oh, we're decentralized, we're decentralized. And when you actually dive into it, none of them are decentralized.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're not open source. The founders hold all the tokens, and there's always like some, and so they all it's like when people say they're green, and environmentally friendly, it's become like a marketing term. I'm decentralized,
Like a keyword,
Yeah,
something that you have to say
yeah,
in the
but
industry.
I can tell you what made me realize, and that was the MetaMask, because I about October last year I started really seriously doing DeFi stuff with MetaMask,
Okay.
and I did lose a lot of money for myself and other people, but what I learned, that was my education, and then I understood it basically. So decentralization matters because you don't want to keep giving people don't mind actually giving their details to different companies. But the thing is, they want it to be simple. When you go on the web these days or you use services and they all say, give me your username, your password, your address, your this, your that, blah, blah. It's just too much. You can't get anything done. And having worked in a lot of enterprises myself, like I probably spend in some companies, I spend 80% of my whole working day logging in and logging out. Have you ever worked in a large enterprise?
Yeah. Google.
Have you spent? Okay, so Google might be better than most, but most large enterprises, you're logging in to all these different IT systems, yeah, and
Using
then
the
seeing how
key that you have to connect
yeah
with
the YubiKey,
multiple
and then
VPNs and
yeah, multiple VPNs, and the thing times out here, then the other guy can't get in. You have to phone. Literally, I've in places I've spent 80% of my time just on security stuff, which shouldn't have anything to do with it. But with crypto, when I was with MetaMask and I just say connect, 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 I was like, this is how it should be in companies, and I think it will become like that in companies where it will just be connect, 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 connect. Just click, click, click. No passwords, no nothings. And that's when I first started to get it that decentralization is important, but crypto is actually going to bring an ease of use that you can't get with centralized services. Because the only way you can get it with centralized services is if everyone decides to use Gmail login, and it's just not going to happen. But with crypto, people will say, I'll use my MetaMask or my Coinbase wallet or something else. And this is what a lot of crypto projects don't get, because they keep inventing new wallets. Like when I see a new project, I always say, what's the reason you're not using MetaMask? Because MetaMask is probably, it's possible that MetaMask basically becomes the new operating system, because it's so valuable. But it looks like a toy now because people see the cute little fox and all that. And I when I first saw MetaMask, I said, this is stupid. I'm not using it. And I'm not going to do a Chrome plugin. But what you're going to see is like now there's already Brave browser, Opera. They have the wallet built in, and I think soon what Google's going to do is they're going to build, when you log in with Google, it's going to have a wallet built in, and they're going to build a wallet into Chrome as well.
actually
And
you
then
have kind of a wallet when you create a Google Authenticator account, kind of. You have a seed phrase, and then you use the Google Authenticator that is not directly connected to your Gmail or Google account.
yeah, but then you have to go to your phone and you have to type in the password all the time. But you're right. But this is what the question. Your question was, what really made me understand crypto, and this was kind of the gateway drug. But now I'm getting deeper into it. I'm realizing you're going to get crypto alternatives to everything, like a DAO. Like when you set up a company, look how painful it is. A DAO is going to solve that. People are going to experiment with DAOs, and you're going to get different collectives which will do things which centralized services do now, but they're going to do it in a kind. I think it's going to allow a lot of crowdsourcing, because at the moment to do crowdsourcing is quite hard. Like you can go onto Kickstarter or something, but there's always that centralized service. And I think another big thing that crypto does, and I've realized, is because you've got this smart contract layer, you're going to have you heard of something? There's this thing which I think it's Ethenity, and it lets you lend Ethereum. I can't remember what it's called. And they've only written a smart contract layer. Different people build different UIs on top of it. And I think that's one of the really good things that I think crypto is going to do. It's going to be that if you have a service in crypto that's not good and the user interface is bad, it will, for the first time, introduce competition by letting you use different UIs. Like, imagine if you don't like Facebook, like, or when you're in a company and you don't like all these horrible user interfaces they force you to use, you can't change the user interface. But with crypto, you can. You can, because now suddenly the back end is basically the crypto, the front end is just the web, and you can swap to different front ends, and that is so powerful because that just gets us out of this thing where a company has a monopoly and a sucky user interface.
Absolutely. And I want to summarize a little bit because you're a very interesting person, because you have been talking about Peter Thiel, you have been talking about Steve Jobs, we have been talking about the market. And when we talk about your early stages in the crypto space, to talk about how the blockchain technology solve key problems, or potentially the technology can be used to solve key problems. For example, logging into different platforms, and then we are talking and migrating the conversation into, we can create a system where you can create different interfaces, but you have a common backend. And I think that is something powerful, for example, for social media. I don't know, just talking about certain ideas. You are building something, or you have like a project that you are working on, because I feel that you have a very interesting know-how, not just in the technical side, but you are interested in building products more than just geeking out about the technology itself. It's like you are interested in understanding like the ecosystem and how we can integrate the technology into real solutions. And I'm really interested to go directly into that intersection. How do you see yourself building things in the ecosystem for integrating everything we have been talking about? Those solutions, are you planning to explode or at least explore some solutions that you want to bring to the market? Or I don't know.
Well, I'm actually building something at the moment. I'm actually building at the moment. So what I want to do, my vision, I've been building since on and off since 2013. So what I want to see is I want it that when entrepreneurs, so I've got some history with investing in companies, and I'd invested in something years ago called Lighttable, and they were trying to like revolutionize, how to build applications, and they had so many interesting ideas that even Apple have publicly said, they based a lot of their ideas on Lighttable. I can send you some links or something. But Lighttable didn't work out. They closed down in 2018. Doing a startup is hard, and sometimes the founders just get burnt out. So when they closed down, I decided to have another go at it myself. If you have to do something, you have to do it yourself. So I started my own builder product, and what that does is that was never anything to do with crypto. But the last year and a half, I've figured out where crypto fits in. So what it is, it's basically a tool where you can build applications on the web in a crowdsourced way. It's under development now. It's all open source. It's public, and anyone can look at it. I'm the only person who works on it at the moment because no one else believes in it, but that's fine for me. It's a life project. So that's you can see that at yazz.com, yazz.com. And that's what I'm building. And so what it will let you do, what is you basically just do drag and drop. Do you remember something called Visual Basic, like a drag and drop? So it's like Visual Basic. You drag and drop things onto the screen, and you can develop your own components. But the components,
like the
template
development environment,
something like that.
The MIT is kind of a standard that it's like drag and drop.
Drag and drop. But the thing is, because it's based on crypto, and here's the key thing, is when you use all of these other development tools, they're always kind of very closed. So people are sometimes not sure if I use this tool, like, is this, what if this company shuts down? You know, will they still be there? So the project's open source. Anyone can copy it. They can build a competitor. I hope they do, you know. And the other part is, because it is built on crypto, it stores all of the components in IPFS, which is the file system, which Filecoin and a lot of and Arweave and all that are built on top of. So you can build applications, and anyone else around the world can use them. And you can't take, and in some ways they're uncensorable because they're stored on IPFS. But of course, you could probably get different servers around the world. So someone might say, I'll use a UK server, which is UK censored. Another person might say, I'll use one in South America, and maybe it allows you to access everything globally. And for me, what this allows is that if people want to start a web business or something, you know, like so often you get someone trying to start a business, they say, oh, I need to find a technical co-founder, you know. But it's silly. They shouldn't need to. They should just do it themselves. But try the idea in 10 minutes, you know, build a DAO around the idea. I haven't built the DAO part yet, but I'm building the part which lets you build applications. People can go try it out. It works. Part of it works today. And you know, you should be able to build your startup in 10 minutes. Why can't you build 50 startup ideas in one day? Why not?
That's amazing.
And this was Steve Jobs' original, like if you actually listen to what Steve Jobs was inspired by, he was actually inspired by this object-oriented programming. So when he built the Next, which led to the web, like because people think of Steve Jobs, they think of the iPhone, they think of Pixar, and they think of all this stuff he did, but they don't realize his passion was object-oriented programming. And if you go and look at his old videos, he talks about using objects, and no one has actually built this yet. And so this is what I'm building. Wow. And it's decentralized.
I would love to see you succeed. I would like to offer my platform whenever you want to talk in our podcast. And I also have the commitment with the world to promote and communicate what good creators are doing and offer a connection where the people that is creating can focus on creating and promoting projects that worth having a voice in the mainstream media. They can use my platform, and I would love to help you however it is possible for me to do that. And we have been talking about decentralization, and we have been going around different ideas around decentralization, but obviously it is imperative that decentralization, because there is an issue we believe we can solve because of the centralization. It's like this is as important as the problem we want to solve. So I would like to talk about centralization because I want to talk about centralized exchanges, especially Binance. But first of all, I would like to understand the bigger picture. So what blockchain technology proposed, basically, eventually, if we run the simulation and we do the thought experiment, and in the proper time frame, eventually, what we are proposing with the blockchain technology is basically restructure the whole society and power structure in the world, kind of. So obviously, the system we have created in the world has clear incentive. Most of them are power and money is kind of a store of power. But the way it is produced until now, it has been centralized. So obviously, this is quite complex, and I don't want to go deeper into certain topics that maybe you don't feel comfortable going to. And if you want, I would love to hear your thoughts. But what is your understanding in the actual status quo of the world, decentralization, and for down the line in the conversation, I would like to talk specifically what is happening right now with Binance and XDF.
Well, with centralization, I mean, you have centralized governments, of course, you know, and historically they've been decentralized because you have power structures which turn into government somehow. I mean, governments are really just the mafia that won, and they have, people who've been in government are not always nice to the people who are under them. Some places in Europe you have some good governance, in Scandinavia, other places not so good. Now the thing is, with people, like centralization, like a lot of people talk about crypto and decentralized money, but it's not always a good thing, because people want ease of use, and there's no doubt that centralized services are easier to use. One of the things that a lot of crypto people, like, I'm totally the decentralized guy, but I one thing that I predict will happen in the future, which all the crypto people tell me I'm wrong, and I hope I'm wrong, is I think you'll have ID shops everywhere in the world, because people are going to be losing their keys all the time. Like, you imagine if someone figures that, you lose your password to your wallets or however you do it, and then suddenly someone has ownership of your house and everything, and to have your work. I mean, there will be some sort of social recovery login or something that people will figure out, but it's also very likely the government will say, look, this is the part of crypto we can control, because there's so much of crypto they can't control. And I think people want ease of use. Like, they want to know that, okay, if I lose my keys, I just, like, I don't know if you remember, I don't know how old you are. How old are you, by the way?
28 years old.
Oh, okay. But so you've probably grown up with mobile phones.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when I was young, there was no mobile phones. And then I remember, like, there was one or two mobile phone shops. And I remember when I was young thinking, oh, these will probably die out soon, And then there was more and more. Now they're everywhere you go. There was a time when every fourth shop was a mobile phone shop. And now in the UK, it's like every third shop is a mobile phone repair shop, And I think ID shops will be something like that. I think they'll just be everywhere. And when, like, when someone who's like 80 years old, suddenly they can't get into, they'll scan their phone and their house key NFT doesn't let them in, they'll go down the local NFT shop, the local government ID shop, say, oh, my house won't let me in, and they'll take a photo and I'll say, yeah, we can see it's you, and they can see that it was stolen, and they might give them a special key card or something and say, use this one. So I think there will still be a lot of levels of centralization. I mean, it's definitely going to go to a hybrid model, but then there'll also be things which will always stay, which people will want to be decentralized. Like, you could say, what's the purpose of Bitcoin? And from what I've heard, is the biggest point of Bitcoin is that there is no central point of failure. I mean, most people who've had Bitcoin have lost it because they couldn't get their keys, but people will get educated, and and that will be a thing people will learn. Like, people learn how to use smartphones, and they'll learn how to store their keys. And like, this is how a lot of people got out of Russia and China. They basically just went across the border. They couldn't take cash, they couldn't use banks, and they just took their Bitcoin across. This is what I've heard. So that's basic. So it gives a lot of sort of portability for wealthy people. And so I think you'll have different types of islands of things, where decentralized matters in some ways and centralization matters for other things, like getting your keys back.
Awesome.
But of course, things like the central banks, like, people say it's a bad thing, but it might also be a good thing, because the government can check on its money supply in real time. I mean, the worst thing is that if you suddenly get on a bad list, you might not have any money. That's the worst thing.
Absolutely.
But I think there will basically be places where decentralization is allowed and other places where it will be made illegal. I mean, don't forget, like, Bitcoin is possible it gets banned in places like the States. And I mean, history already shows it. Like, in, what is it, the 50s or the 60s, America banned gold, and everyone who had gold had to give it to the government. And it could happen with Bitcoin as well. They said that once they figure out how powerful it is, they could be like, oh, this can get rid of our debt.
Yeah.
They might just say everyone has to hand in their Bitcoin, and people will then have to make a choice: renounce your US citizenship or give your Bitcoin in. And we think it can't happen, but it happened in Greece, where a few years ago in Greece, where they just took a lot of people's bank accounts.
So when the status quo is in such a context where it's like in existential danger, then we actually perceive how they will react to that thing that is potentially a threat, but has not become a threat. It's once it reaches a level that is like an existential threat that the big actions take place. If that's so, what will happen? For example, if we analyze how it is allocated, the fiat money in the market, and if we go through the bigger market caps public companies, and we check their investors, and we quite easily can identify the pattern that certain companies usually have a big percentage of basically every single major company in the world. For instance, BlackRock. So there are certain guys that looks like have an interest beyond the market and more focus on the power behind or the result of having the money located in a certain way. So once the blockchain technology exists in the market in such a way that it is an existential threat for the status quo, that I believe we are not there. What will happen? What do you believe? Because I know you like
okay.
market.
Yeah, okay. So the thing is, at the moment, people are buying Bitcoin hoping it will go up. Yeah. And that might push, I don't know, that will push it maybe to 500,000 or 1,000,000, I don't know. But the real increase, I believe, is going to happen in the future. But the difference in the future, when people buy Bitcoin, if you're a company, you're going to be buying Bitcoin, but you're not going to be buying it hoping it will go up. It's going to be the opposite. You'll be buying Bitcoin hoping it will go down. And I'll tell you why. Because it's going to be like an insurance policy. Because if Bitcoin goes up too much, it basically means that fiat money is becoming worthless. And so I think companies are going to start buying Bitcoin, saying, well, we might put 2% into Bitcoin, but we don't want, they're actually not going to want that Bitcoin to go to 50%. They're actually going to hope it goes to zero, because people buy insurance policies all the time, and it's going to be, but insurance policy might be called policy against an insurance policy against the collapse of fiat. Because then if fiat collapses, then the insurance policy pays out, and the Bitcoin will be worth 20 times as much or 50 times as much. So it's quite funny that the higher the Bitcoin price goes, the more people are buying it, hoping the price will go down. So counterintuitive.
That's an interesting perspective.
Because that's where the big money is. I mean, big funds like BlackRock with what? How many? 12 trillion, is it? I don't know, in assets. I'm not sure. But all of the big fund managers, I mean, there's a few things. Like, one is that they want to just buy something like a normal ETF. That's one part of it, yeah. Because they're not because if you're someone like BlackRock, right, you don't want to have to manage your own keys and all that. That is going to happen at some point, but at the moment, they literally can't do it. I mean, because you have to think about it, right? If you're a fund manager, right, let me ask you a question. What is better? Is it better that you buy Bitcoin now at 20K, or you buy it in 2 years at 200K?
No,
that's not how they think.
Okay.
Because the thing is, if you're working in an investment fund, right? If you invest now and it loses like 50% or gains 50%, you don't really get any credit, right? But you could get fired for it. If it loses, like, say at half, someone could fire you. So you bought Bitcoin at 20K, it went down to 10K. But in, say, 2 years' time, say Bitcoin's at 200K or even 500K, when all of the fund managers are buying it, you don't care if it goes up or down, because everyone's winning or losing. So people think that people invest because they think the value is going to go up, but it's just not the case. People will also invest because, like the first reason is, a lot of people don't want to lose their job. You know, so they'll be like, everyone's doing it. So, because what they're going to do, they're not going to fight every fund manager who bought Bitcoin if it halves in value. Like look at the stock market. Every single company is probably what, one third, half of the value now, yeah, or a third, or say half. But they haven't fired every single CEO, have they? They haven't fired every CEO.
Yeah.
So you know, and I learned this because I learned this actually when I used to work in recruitment. Actually, it's like people think that an amazing the best candidate gets hired, you know, or the best investment, but it's not. You have to be equally whoever's most equally disliked gets hired, because people always have groupthink in these organizations. They're like, what's that guy doing? Oh, if I buy the, you know, anyway, so what I'm saying is, if I'm a fund manager now and I want to get my bonus, I buy Bitcoin at 20K. If it goes to 10K, I lose my job. But in 2 years' time, that'll be different. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And this is why people wonder, how does the price go up? And the less people want it to work, often the more it goes up, because it's an insurance policy.
That's quite interesting because, yeah, usually I don't analyze Bitcoin from that framework. So it is not, my thought process is not used to see Bitcoin as an insurance policy. So, but it's a very interesting thought experiment.
Yeah, I mean, the big things happening with Bitcoin now is Lightning Network, which is basically, I mean, Bitcoin could take over the whole payments industry. Like you've heard of, you know, Strike in the USA and Jack Mallers. I mean, Bitcoin might become the global payment standard. It's possible. And the other thing is things like, have you heard of Sovereign? Sovryn?
No, I'm not familiar with that one.
So this is a project, I think, that basically is Bitcoin, but you can write smart contracts on Bitcoin with the Ethereum virtual machine.
Okay.
And Sovereign is good because they allow you, if you've got Bitcoin, you can borrow 0% interest against your own Bitcoin. Wow. Fantastic project.
That's an amazing, yeah.
Full disclosure, I do own some. But I do think it's an amazing project, but no one believes in it. Like, it's worth almost nothing. No one believes, and this is like I remember when I was in Bitcoin in the early days, it's worth like $60 million or something, and people were just saying, look, just throw them away.
Yeah, user adoption. Sometimes people don't know about these projects.
No, people knew about Bitcoin. People knew about it, but people just said it's. Even when you explained it, people said that no one's going to be interested in decentralization or digital money. It's worthless. That's why the bloke spent 10,000 Bitcoins on the pizza.
Absolutely. But
I mean, it's probably a coin today that's going to be have bigger gains than Bitcoin in say 10 years. But the only way to know what it is by studying all the white papers. And this is what companies like Multicoin Capital are doing all day. They're basically going around, like you asked, one of your earliest questions was, you know, what could the future hold? Like, where's the alpha? What's going to pump? And it's very possible to do it. You just you look at people like who is it? Chamath Palapati. Do you watch the All In podcast?
I'm not familiar with that guy.
Right now. You should watch it. All In, ALLIN is probably the number one podcast at the moment, I'd say, in the world in Bitcoin and crypto and for finance. And people from like Chamath and people from places like Multicoin Capital, all of these crypto investing firms, some of these firms are literally making 10,000x returns. All they're doing is reading white papers and trying to fit the pieces of the puzzle together and trying to see, okay, I understand the tokenomics here. This could do well because of this. They're trying to, because when you're investing your own money, you really, suddenly you focus,
Absolutely.
So that's all they do.
Warren Buffett.
Yeah. I mean, they just read white papers all day long. I mean, a lot of people were clever enough to just invest in Ethereum, and so that made a lot of wealthy people. And yeah, I wasn't one of them. Yeah, but I did it with Bitcoin in the early days. Yeah, I lost it all, but I understand it's just a simple pattern. But most people, the thing is, they want to go onto an exchange and they're buying and selling a coin, trying to make money. That's just going to the casino. That's not how you make. That's how you lose your. I know people who've remortgaged and borrowed a lot of money and they've lost it all. And but they think they're going to make 100x, and it's just not going to happen. The only way to do it is you have to put in the work. And I'll tell you what, it's boring as hell. It's so boring to do. But once you get into it, the coins you'll buy, they'll probably go down 95% in value as well. They'll probably go down, so I've had coins, like when I first got into Bitcoin, it went down 95% in value.
So that's a new job, actually. Having the expertise, the capability of understanding technically is like being a developer, but not being a developer in that functional way, but just to understand the technical capability of a project and then locating capital. Kind of is like,
yes, but don't forget, the best way to understand these projects is actually by by trying to write something in it. Like, there's a lot of projects which look fantastic on the white paper, but you have to actually dive in and try and say, okay, I'll set this up on my computer. That's when you realize whether they can do it. Because if they can't, at the end of the day, if they can't attract developers, the project's going to die. I mean, I see fantastic projects all the time, but they do not understand that they have to have a smooth developer experience. All the top crypto investors, that's what they do. They basically just look at projects, they try and download it, and they try and run it themselves. If it's a Ethereum based, they might try and call a smart contract or something. But how many people are going to do that? Yeah, it's work. No one wants to do any work. We all want, that's the problem, because I don't know about women, but for men, they have this fantasy. They just want an engine sitting in their house, making money at night, pumping out infinite money. It's like a fantasy that men have, but they don't want to put in that work. They want the machine to do it. But it's very doable. And I see, and so when I meet investors, I know which investors are going to do well pretty much, and they pretty much do, because the investors are normally just, they're just diving into the projects, analyzing them, and also they've got a mindset, because most of the investors who are terrible, they're always trying to prove themselves right. But the best investors are the ones who are trying to poke holes in what they're doing. They're trying to find out why they're wrong, and that's a mindset. Because as humans, we want to be correct, and we want everyone to
is wrong, and it's just to make the best effort to be less wrong. Kind of
but like, for example, say you believe in a token, you see a token. You shouldn't be thinking, like the founders will always say to you, like, you probably get pitched on tokens, yeah. The founders will always say to you, this project, we've got a market cap of a potential market of $10 trillion. And we've got this growth, blah, 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 blah. But they're never telling you how it's going to fail.
Absolutely.
So when people offer me investment for my project, I always say, don't waste, I don't want you to lose your money. This could fail, this could fail, this could fail, this could fail. I could get run over by a bus. This could fail, this could fail. You have to always be telling them why it's not going to work. And so the investors who are always looking at their projects, why they're going to fail, are the ones who do well, not the ones who are looking at how they're going to succeed. And when you have no way to fail, that's when you've probably got a good project.
Awesome. That's an amazing insight. At least for the people that really want to be in this space in the long term and having some hardcore fundamentals. Because reading the insight you gave me is reading the white paper is not enough. It's actually investing in the people that can create a product that create a good developer experience. That is like the next level. It's like,
but that's obvious. It's not enough, no.
Huge.
Because the white paper, I can copy and paste the Ethereum white paper, and this is what a lot of people do: is they copy and paste white papers, they put a different name on it, and they try and pump it.
Okay, so the white paper is like, you can fact check the white paper. It is in order, and the technology is rookie. Is it like?
I mean, but also, apart from the white paper, you have to think, why is the person doing it? I mean, I think with Vitalin, I think he used to play World of Warcraft, and he wanted to know, I'm not sure what he had a motivation, like, why can't I own my assets or something? I'm not sure, but he had an actual motivation. I mean, you have to talk to people. If their motivation is to make money, It could still be a successful project, but then they have to be really amazing. But generally, the people who are not in it for the money are the ones who, who want to change something, the ones who do something good, who'll actually end up making money as well. I mean, if you do a project, you have to always say to the person, because you need to make sure that someone sticks with it for 5 or 10 years to have a chance. And you have to say, what will happen if you run out of money? And if they say, oh, I'll move on to something else, never invest. You want the sort of people who say, I'll die with this project. It's quite hardcore.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's true.
My God.
Look at Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs, worked. Even I think he died he was working on the day he died, I think. And that's what that's what you want.
These insights. Because usually things are obvious once you go back, and after you said it, it is so obvious. It's like, how the hell this project will eventually go well if it's hard to create over it? If this is a whole ecosystem where the products that go to the market and do well is because people use it. But how can you have a good understanding of the product if you don't use it? And the way to use a smart contract is by developing over it. It's like being a developer. It's a very deep insight, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, how do you know an apple is good? Just taste it.
Yeah, but it's actually quite complex to taste it. And I think that is a huge market opportunity. Just teaching people how to develop the skills to being able to have that perception as users is like how to taste that user experience, being developers with the perspective of pondering if it is worth allocating capital on it. So it's quite interesting. But I would like to talk about Binance, FTX, and this as a subtopic of everything we are talking up until this point. So how do you understand everything that is happening right now?
I mean, it's funny because Binance went FTX went and bought all these other failed exchanges. I mean, there was a problem with people not having. I mean, the problem here, if for people who don't know the problem, it was what was reported was that Binance said that FTX didn't have enough liquid assets in case people withdrew all their assets in crypto, and they were. I think it looks like they were correct. But when I say they said FTX, they mean FTX and Alameda, which are both owned by Sam Bankman-Fried. So it looks like they were correct, and it also looks like FTX was kind of fighting to get more regulation in the space. So it looks like, I think overall long term it should be a good thing for the industry. I mean, Sam Bankman-Fried, he's probably made a few billions out of it. So it was a tough blow for him. He did a lot of good stuff as well. And I think now that means Binance is going to. I've always liked Binance, by the way. They've always been the most reliable exchange I've ever used. Always much better than Coinbase or any of the others. Even though they're got a lot of centralized stuff on them, but I like them. That means they're going to be the big player. They'll add stability, and CZ is kind of very much a good crypto player from what we've seen. So I think it'll be good long term, and maybe FTX will become their regulated arm. I don't know, for institutions. I've no idea, but I think it's good for the space. Of course, it wasn't fun for people who were scared they were going to lose everything, and because of course everyone started withdrawing their assets from FTX. I mean, did you see the FTX token just falling, FTT falling over the day? It was crazy. And anyway, so I think
sorry. And then going up back when Binance kind of said that want to acquire FTX.
Yeah, it started going up, and then the last I saw, it had gone down to like 12.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy.
But anyway, I don't think it matters now. I mean, I hope I hope the sale goes through, because we don't need FTX to go under. I think they should survive, and I think Binance can. I mean, I don't know if Sam Bankman-Fried is going to want to work for CZ, but Is it? I mean, I feel sorry for Sam Bankman-Fried. It was his baby, but he's got a few $1 billion, so hopefully he won't be crying too much.
Yeah.
And no, and hopefully no one loses their money. That's the most important thing. Hopefully hopefully people start putting their deposits back into FTX and Binance, and maybe there'll be an even bigger powerhouse.
At the end of the day, I believe centralized exchanges play an important role for user acquisition. For example,
Mm,
you said a couple of things. In the early stages, in the early days, having the responsibility of taking care of your Bitcoins was a challenging
mm,
task.
mm,
And you are saying it as a tech guy. So
mm,
I think centralized exchanges are like a very important and fundamental uh, piece in the equation looking forward. It's like moving the simulation into the future,
mm.
because without exchanges and centralized exchanges, even the purists maybe don't like centralized exchanges. And that's what you said, some sort of centralization play an important role and solve specific issues. So what's your overall perspective on centralized exchanges and the role they played in the ecosystem?
Well, I mean, overall, it is about like not your keys, not your coins, isn't it? I mean,
Mm.
having lost pretty much all of my net worth in centralized exchanges, even
Wow,
though yeah, because
really?
which I lost in MT Gox and also another one at the time, and knowing a lot of people who've lost everything, I mean, I lost close to 98% or something of everything I had,
Oh,
and I was and I knew how to secure crypto, and I thought I was an expert, you know. Um, Maybe not 98%, but anyway, I lost a lot. Yeah. So, um, I mean, who's arguing over 1% when it's that much? Yeah. So there's nothing wrong with centralized exchanges. The thing is, and this is where regulation does come in, because if the government had said, we will, um, like when you look at empty Gox, yeah, the government of Japan came in and they tried to get money back for people, which I commend. I don't know if it's the government of Japan, but they're trying to get people's money back. But you look at when Celsius went down, the government's not trying to help people.
mm,
But if a normal, but like in the UK, take the UK for example, if your bank goes bust, the government will pay you £80,000, which is about
mm,
90,000 euros or something. But above that, you don't get it back. But crypto, we have nothing. Like when you lose your money in crypto, all that happens is people say, ha ha.
yeah.
So with regulation, and this is going to be key, like I know EU's coming out with their MiCA law soon, or in the next year or two. It's going to be a while, yeah, because they don't forget once they come out with their crypto law, they have to translate it to 28 languages in the EU. So it's going to be a bit of a disaster already. We can see that. But if people don't get safety in their deposits, and then you'll get exchanges will have to be regulated with the government and licensed so that the government will make sure people get their money back. All that will happen is the business will go overseas. I mean, at the moment, the number one place for crypto is Dubai, I'd say. Gibraltar's not bad. You've got some good places here.
Mm.
Like there's some really good companies here. Like you've probably heard of Damex.
Yeah, I have it in the radar. Yeah.
Yeah, so Damex, Damex. So they're the people who sponsor my own podcast, but they're a fantastic company, massively regulated outside the EU, but they can also serve within the EU. They've got they've got lots of facilities. So people like that, um, do you call them an exchange? They do so much stuff on chain, and I think this is what you'll start to see. You'll start to see exchanges like Damex who are putting more stuff on chain. Because the thing is, if Celsius was on chain, you wouldn't care. You could see it would be transparent. For example, if FTX had all been 100% on chain and people could track it, people wouldn't have cared. You do have decentralized exchanges, but how many people know how to use Uniswap? Not
Yeah.
many. So now you're starting to get companies like Damex, which are bridging that gap between centralized company but decentralized services. And that might be the future, because ideally you want to know if your company has the assets. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a very interesting. So the fact that it's centralized help you outsource the security of your assets, but you still have the benefits of the blockchain technology and the culture behind.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
amazing.
But it's not so easy, because if you have smart contracts, now you have another. The one thing that every company who has smart contracts has to realize is you've got people attacking you all the time. You have to make sure your contracts are solid, and this is where the real world, how do I say, discipline comes in. You have to, because a lot of people release smart contracts. They say, "Oh, it's ready." They release it, they get hacked. And then they say, "Not our fault." But when you have a smart contract, you have to be constantly trying to break your own smart contract. And this is where the attitude of trying to prove you're wrong comes in. It does in the crypto system. Being an eternal optimist is bad. You have to always be a pessimist, because otherwise you'll get hacked. Like the founder of Intel, not the founder, but one of the CEOs, Andy Grove, he wrote, "Only the paranoid survive," and that is the case with crypto. And you can see it. How many exchanges have gone down? All of them. FTX, no one would have imagined they'd go down, and they did. When MTGOX went down, they had like 95% of the market, and people said they were too big to fail. I don't know. Do you remember when they went down?
I don't remember exactly when.
2014,
Okay.
And when they went down, I should have taken my coins off, but I listened to the experts. Always be careful of experts, because the experts all the experts in this space were saying, no, they're too big to fail. They're the one exchange which isn't bankrupt. Like Coinbase is from the same time. The only reason Coinbase is still alive is they're more paranoid, and they didn't get hacked. There's loads of other
interesting scenario.
Yeah.
Threats are not just technical. This is kind of the psychology of the market. That kind of was the threat. Like,
well, it's your psychology as a founder. Well, it is technical, but the thing is, it manifests how you are. If you're a person who just, you say, I'm going to have a crypto company, you write a smart contract, and then you release it and you get hacked. That psychology is not going to work. You have to be someone who's constantly saying, I have to break this. You have to keep hiring hackers and putting bug bounties out. You have to keep saying to people, break what I've done. Show me how otherwise it will, you'll just get hacked when you're really big, and then suddenly you lose billions. Terra Luna is the perfect example. I was telling people before it crashed, it could go down. Nobody believed me.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but they didn't got hacked. It was like a wrong criteria when building the algorithm or the structure.
Well, okay, with smart contracts, yeah, okay. So the thing is, getting hacked, the design of your system is, if you write a smart contract
like
that's not secure,
a weakness.
But don't forget, they had a bad design on part of their mechanism. It's the same as getting hacked, actually.
Okay.
The problem is, when you see news reports, no one wants to admit getting hacked. They always say, we were attacked, because people always like to blame someone else. They'll never say, you know what, we screwed up.
That's true.
How often they always say, even when FTX was going down, they said, we're being attacked. It's like, come on, guys. Can someone tell the truth, please?
I'm absolutely grateful for this conversation. I believe a lot of people will be as grateful as I am. You are a source of gems. I would love to talk about your products. I would love to talk more about your trajectory, and I hope this opportunity repeat in the near future, where we can keep talking about many interesting nuances in the space. And this space moves so fast that I'm absolutely sure we will have the opportunity of talk about how the merge actually everything that is happening right now in the ecosystem of Ethereum, for example, and in the middle term, how Solana scale, or how eventually Cardano pull off some of
Cardano,
of the whole development ecosystem.
I'm studying Cardano a lot now at the moment.
Haskell and the whole.
But I'm studying Cardano,
because
Haskell and all that.
It's like they are like the academics of the whole space, like the
Well, there is a reason that Cardano can work, but we can cover that in another episode.
Absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate your time. I don't want to take more of it. And I just want to say thank you for joining. Thank you for sharing everything. And it has been an amazing experience for me. And I hope it has been a good experience for you too.
Thank you. It was, and it was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.